better and better and better, season after season after season. Is this going to be the top time early doors? No, actually it goes second, because Raffaele Marciello is the quickest, 0.188 of a second between them. Now, John, at the start of the day, in the free practice session, we had quite a few teams sitting out the first half an hour, just preserving tyres, just letting the circuit rubber in. Doesn't have that feel this time. Everybody wants to be out there setting times, don't they?
Absolutely, but I think one of the key reasons people may have chosen to sit out, to sacrifice half an hour of running, was because it was chilly at Monza this morning. Ambient was 8, that's in the sunlight. Track temperature 9.5, and we noticed, and I'm sure the drivers in many of the cars felt it, not a lot of grip, and in particular down at the shaded end of the racetrack, into Lesmo 1 in particular. Track there appeared to be unusually slippery for this time of year.
Well, certainly it proved that the circuit was a bit of a handful for some earlier on. Now you're riding with Earl Bamber here, Le Mans winner in the Porsche, the GPX racing car with the Martini colours this year. It was Gulf last year, but another, I hate the word iconic, but you can argue it is right in this case. The Martini colours that's taken to a Le Mans win in 71, and Earl Bamber at the wheel of number 22 Porsche, 20th fastest, but there's more to come, of course, as we get through this session. Quite a lot of track limit warnings going on already, and Raffaele Marciello is the man who is fastest. Looks good, that Porsche, John, doesn't it?
I mean, it always looks good. Whatever the colour scheme Porsche choose to, or the graphics they choose to lay over these cars, I could never say anything other than they look wonderful in my eyes. But of course the iconic, well, we've got the iconic Gulf Porsche colours, the iconic Martini Porsche colours, the iconic Martini Brabham. Sorry, I didn't say that. That's not this sort of racing.
That was driven so well by a certain Northern Irishman, yes. Earl Bamber over the timing line there. Dries van Thor has gone top. There's the McLaren that is venturing onto the circuit. Just saw it to the right. I'll tell you who's driving it in a minute when I found out, because that's a car just joining in late now. It's the car that Rob Bell, Ben Barnicoat and Ollie Wilkinson share. Ollie Wilkinson is the driver, found him. Right, Eddie Cheever for the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari team. It's another car that rattles over the curb at the Rettifiglio. Do those curbs really hurt much, John, against the car, I'm thinking here, although I suppose it adds up over 3 hours of the race, doesn't it?
Well, first of all, I think use of curbs aggressively is never a good thing for a race car, but some suspensions on certain cars absorb the impact, the shock load, much better than others. And I remember certainly watching back in the days when Bentley ran as a factory team, because that team was focused up at M Sport, up in Cumbria, in the northwest of Great Britain. They came from a rallying background, so they had very good expertise in spring shock absorber, that relationship. And that Bentley, used to the Series 1 Bentley, certainly was exceptionally good at riding curbs. Didn't upset the car. But look around you, you'll see some cars, I mean, the Ferrari, I would say, in general terms, rides curbs very, very well indeed. Watching the 93 Eddie Cheever Ferrari up through Ascari. You can see, I think what's happened, David, as we've progressed with developments in technology, by and large, GT3 cars are getting stiffer. And part of that is to, in a sense, to deal with aerodynamics and to try and keep consistency in aerodynamics. So therefore you want to keep the car as level as possible, as long as possible, to get the best out of your aerodynamics is what people are looking to achieve. And how they will go about that, well, there's a myriad of ways they can do it. But one way is inevitably the cars will get stiffer with the bigger downforce loads going through the chassis.
Well, there is the Jota McLaren then. It is Ollie Wilkinson behind the wheel of it at the moment. Ben Barnicoat and Rob Bell share the car. Unusual colour scheme, you could argue, for a McLaren that, but it looks good. And it was pretty quick this morning, wasn't it? Ben Barnicoat, I think, did the best time in that car and was quick.
I mean, it's a great car. I think they ended up 11th this morning. So Ollie Wilkinson, that image of Ollie Wilkinson, is he 18 or older or younger? He looks really, really, I mean, as many drivers are now doing, they all look, and we just finished watching the inaugural GP2 event that took place here a few minutes ago. not too many callow youths in that series, and I wouldn't expect it to be.
Different strokes and all that, but yes, Wilkinson is another McLaren factory driver. Maybe you should have a go at a GT2 car, John. What do you think?
At the minute, I think I'm probably a little bit on the youthful side of being considered. I mean, look, also, it would not be very good order to go out and beat your boss.
That's very true.
And if your boss is going to compete in GT2, what would he say if I went out and blew his doors off? He would say, there's your P45, Watson, get out.
Sacrificing yourself again, John, for the good of the cause. Well done. Right, Ollie Wilkinson then, looking good this lap. 2 greens, therefore, 2 personal best in the sectors, comes up towards the timing line. Let's see where it's going to put in, because he's nowhere at the moment. It goes up to 11th. So it is a Mercedes 1-2, it's an Audi 3-4, Mercedes 5, Ferrari 6, Ferrari 7. Ferrari topped the times this morning, which was courtesy of number 71, the time done by Antonio Fuoco. He's behind the wheel at the moment, as into the pit lane comes the Mad Panda Mercedes. Rick Brokers at the wheel. But the Ferraris did look really good this morning, both the Paravan linked cars.
Certainly did. Antonio Fuoco is apparently, so my well-placed, how would I say, confidant, suggesting that Fuoco is being lined up within the Ferrari hierarchy for things beyond GT racing, held in very high esteem by the Scuderia.
Interesting. He's been on the fringes of Formula 3, Formula 2 for a while. Quick driver, but now let's see where his career takes him. This is the Castle car that Benjamin Highties is behind the wheel of. Replacement chassis, because the first one didn't last very long this week, because it had a big accident coming out of the Ascari chicane in the paint test earlier on in the week. But the Chilean driver, Benjamin Highties, then is currently 27th fastest. Almost seems wrong looking at a Ferrari with Fiat written on it. I know it's all part of the same group, but even so, it's a bit strange to see, you could argue. And he's about to get up towards the traffic as Vincent Abril improves in a sector. So does Dries Van Thorn. Norbert Siedler is the other one to keep an eye to now, because number 163 Lamborghini is up to 7th fastest.
Just on the theme of looking at the Ferrari with the Fiat identity on the bonnet, it would be a bit like seeing a Porsche running with VW on the bonnet. There are very tenuous and long extending tentacles that starting designing the VW Beetle and then going on and manufacturing one of the most iconic sports car brands in the world.
Yeah, true indeed. Right, Highties Bales comes into the pit lane. 90 minutes this session. So again, it doesn't affect the grid. It does mean that everybody that's taken part in it has notionally qualified. If they then have a problem tomorrow and can't get into their individual bit of qualifying because they've done pre-qualifying, that counts to at least have taken part in a qualifying process. It's a throwback to the old regulations of FIA GT days, a long, long time ago. It keeps that same wording for the same purpose. There is 163 then, which is Norbert Siedler, 7th fastest. This could be very much a race-winning car, couldn't it, number 163 Lamborghini? Because again, you've got good drivers, Norbert Siedler, Albert Costa and Giacomo Altwe.
Yes, it's a strong lineup, whichever way you look at it. I didn't catch it, maybe I was looking at timing and scoring. Did we see temperatures, track and ambient temperatures for this session? I'm curious because currently lap times are about 1.5 seconds down on what we saw this morning. Now, everybody went out this morning on a brand new set of rubber, and I suspect everybody out in this session might well be on the rubber they finished the earlier session on, just trying to figure out where that 1.5 seconds has gone, bearing in mind that Raffaele Marcello is currently quickest in the Mercedes, and normally when he's quickest, it reflects in a pretty impressive lap time. Right now, 1:48.0 would have put you, looking at my timing, would have put you around about 30th based on this morning's times.
You'd have thought, wouldn't you, with more activity on the track, there'd be more rubber down, which would have helped. But you're right, the times are some way off at the moment. Dries Van Thorn has got within 4/10 of Raffaele Marciello. And again, are people working on setup? Are they thinking about qualifying laps, getting ready for tomorrow? Are they thinking about dummy race runs? Because, you know, again, what we have now at around about 2:20 Italian time, different time of day from when they'll be on track for qualifying, and the car could have a completely different feel first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, in the morning, people will use the best or new tyres wherever possible, and we certainly saw what was capable. I mean, the Ferrari's time this morning, 146.6, in track conditions which were not ideal. There was a lot less rubber on the racetrack. It needed to be cleaned up. It was a bit on the green side. Nevertheless, within 3 laps, Ferrari had set a lap time which had remained unchallenged for the remaining hour and 28 minutes or so of that session.
Well, there is the BMW that Thomas Neubauer is currently driving, and that car is now third fastest. Marco Wittmann in the sister car at Valkenhorst is up to the top of the times now. So Marco Wittmann, DTM champion, has done a 1:47.821. All of a sudden the BMWs starting to not assert themselves. It's a bit early to say that, but coming into the mix, let's phrase it like that. We've got a few under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, one of which is the Zimmermann, Galbiati, Schmidt Lamborghini, and another one is the Jordan Love, Miklas Born, Yannick Mettler Mercedes. So they're being looked at for possibly speeding in the pit lane. 43 cars in total, 42 have now ventured out onto the circuit. So again, we have to try and work out which is the late comer to the ball. But I'll get there in a moment. So there is Neubauer in the BMW. The BMWs have got lots of grunt, of course, John, so they could be, again, up in that long, long list of potential winners.
I don't know why. Maybe because this, the M8 has been around for, M6 in fact, it has been around for a period of time. We rather overlook it. And because we always look at the Audis or the Lamborghinis or the Porsche or Mercedes, whatever, to be potentially the quickest cars in the race. These cars are outstanding race cars, especially, and not running quite as wide as that Thomas Neubauer, but anyway, they are outstanding long-distance GT cars. We saw all that took place in the 9 hours in South Africa in December, and right now BMW are first and third quickest, and this Raffaele Marciello is the Mercedes-Benz meat in the BMW sandwich.
I think part of the reason we sometimes overlook them is that quite often they're Pro-Am or Am cars, not necessarily overall cars. I know they were in IGTC, yes, go with you on that, but very definitely they are overall contenders this weekend, and so is this car. This is number 71 Ferrari. It is Antonio Fuoco at the wheel of it. He was the fastest driver in the free practice session this morning, and now we're on board with a driver that Ferrari think is a star of the future, John.
Very much so. So round Lesmo 1. I mean, nothing left on the racetrack, just the curb and then the gravel on the outside into Lesmo 2 again, right, and probably ran the gravel on the edge. That you need to be careful if you drop that outside wheel off. Take it from me, the barrier on the right-hand side of the track will attack you.
Brilliant shots these, aren't they? Hard on the brakes now.
Yeah, big break into Ascari, but it's a really, really good chicane. A nice blend of left, right, and back to the left. Careful on the exit, of course, especially in the earlier part of the day when there was a amount of moisture in the air. But now all you can do is push your foot through the firewall to try and get an extra kilometre or two of speed. And on the brakes, big break at 100 kilometres down. 2 gears, possibly maybe 3 gears, depending on how your car is geared. Build the speed now. It's just flat out all the way to get across the finish line, which is here. You saw the white line as opposed to the start line, which is here. One of the few circuits that's got a different start line to finish line.
Well, not that lap, but the one before it was cancelled for Fuoco because of track limit abuse. That lap looked okay, and he's still fifth fastest.
And I think he might be behind the Jota McLaren. Just we haven't seen an awful lot of it. But again, a very, very strong car. And Jota coming in, Oliver Wilkinson, who was in the car initially, Ben Barnacle, who we know well, likewise Rob Bell. Here we go now, the exit, looking up to the exit of Ascari. Johnny Adam, I mean, a legend. I mean, an absolute legend at British GT and our GT series under different title sponsors. Just a star, whatever way you look at it.
Absolutely.
And he's a Scot as well.
Yeah, you can't have everything, can you? But he's a great guy, Johnny Adam. And not only is he a very quick driver, he is a very good driver coach, isn't he? And he's absolutely ideal to have with the likes of Alexander West, because he's helped to bring him on. It was the same with Andrew Howard when he won British GT, the same with Ahmad Al-Hafi, for example, in the Oman Racing Team era. Johnny works with drivers. His pace is his pace. That's going to happen. But he works with the AM to bring them on, to get them faster and faster, because that's where the difference is to be made. If you make your AM a quicker AM, that's where you can find the time, isn't it?
Absolutely, but it'll be interesting to see just how much work can be done by Johnny Adam, because this morning they were 38th out of the 43 cars that eventually got to run. Now, this morning is just a session to give everybody, I think, seat time and get behind the wheel and relearn and re-assimilate your body with the kind of experiences you get when you drive at this level. So we're going to expect Alexander West and Chris Goodwin, who's a very accomplished racing driver as well, maybe better known these days for racing historically. I mean, as an historic race driver, and he himself isn't historic.
Indeed. A quick look at where we stand in Pro-Am in terms of this session. Eddie Cheever currently fastest, ahead of Ollie Milroy. Phil Keane, Phil's another legend really from British GT, is ahead of Johnny Adam. Phil yet to win the title, but not for the want of trying. Then you've got the Julien Apollates Porsche, Dominic Baumann, Jens Klingmann, Stuart White, Tim Kerman and Adrian Amstutz. That's how the top 10 stand in Pro-Am at the moment. Johnny Adams' lap ain't going to be an improvement here because he's down in the sectors, but working through a programme for Garage 59, and he's going to come into the pit lane at the end of that lap.
And there are two of these, I mean, they're vividly painted Ferraris. You know, the what's it called, the name of the team? Iron Lynx, yes.
Well, that is the sister Garage 59 Aston Martin. Valentin Asclot at the wheel of it. Silver Cup at the moment is being headed by Tommaso Mosca in the number 99 Audi from Mikael Grenier, and then the redoubtable Ezequiel Perez Compact, Simon Gachet fourth, Alex Fontana fifth, Arichi Tomita sixth fastest. You're looking at Nikolai Sheargard, rather, not Valentin Asclot. It is Sheargard at the wheel, the former single-seater racer. Somebody else who dabbles in historics with his dad in their Daytona Cobra. And this car is quite a long way back at the moment, 40th. But again, we still got over an hour, so it'll be higher than that, I think, by the end of the session.
I mean, one thing that Silver Cup competitors will not necessarily be looking at is to try and put their car on pole position. Their battle is within their own category, and that's what they'll be focused on. So whether they qualify inside the top 20 or outside the top 20, their focus is not on trying to win this race, which would be a bonus should it happen, but really winning their category. And that's their get the head down, do the hard yards. And this morning in this 1.5 hour session, before we go to qualifying, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, goodness knows what the ambient temperature will be like then, but I suspect it'll be as chill as it was this morning.
So right now it is Marco Wittmann's BMW topping the times from the Santalok Audi number 25 that Adrien Tambay has got behind the wheel of. Adrien Tambay, Patrick's son, and we've seen him in Formula 3, we've seen him in the DTM, but he's never quite really been able to assert himself or position himself in one category as a headline driver. It's good that he's coming into GT racing, and I think he'll be an asset to the team. So he's second ahead of Raffaele Marciello. That Mercedes is one that we know should be competitive. Luca Stoltz, Hubert Haupt, Vincent Abril. It's Luca Stoltz at the wheel of the BVT liveried Mercedes. 9th fastest at the moment, that car, John.
Yes, I mean, again, not something I'll be overly concerned about, because we know the quality of the driver lineup behind the wheel of this Mercedes, and I mean, I'm fascinated by its new sponsor and the graphics on the car. Familiar with it in Formula 1, but to see it in our series is very welcome indeed, and it certainly, if nothing, brings diversity of graphic design, and again, just the cars look fantastic.
Is it quick? That's the next question. Stolz to the line and doesn't improve, stays 9th fastest. I've got a feeling, I'm right in saying those colours were carried in Mercedes DTM and Mercedes engine Formula 3 days by SRO Motorsport, for example. But yeah, coming into GT racing, it's good to see. And there goes the Audi. That is Christopher Mies. Now here's something we don't say very often. Christopher Mies only 40th fastest. There's a car with work to do.
I mean, I would imagine, again, the Tempter Racing's Audi is going to be, when it matters, where that car would automatically... I mean, Matteo Drudi, who's one of the 3 drivers in that car, Christopher Mies and Kim Louis Schramm, I mean, that's a car that would, in my view, comfortably qualify inside the top 20, maybe inside the top 15. Arguably, if Matteo Drudi was doing the qualifying, or the all 3, of course, the times are combined, that car could be in the top 10. But there's probably about 20 cars I could mention off the top of my head that all should be in the top 10.
Yes, exactly. And sheer maths means you can't have it. Mies runs a little bit wide, kicks up a little bit of gravel, a little bit of dust as he goes through. But he's on it, because look at this, 4 tenths quicker than he had been in the first sector. Christopher Mies hustling on then as he comes now down towards the Variante Ascari, and another improvement in that middle sector. So the Attempto Audi, Arkin Arca's team, heads now on this run down to the Parabolica. Lots of curb being used there as well, John.
Yes, but it was all going forward. He used the curb. It didn't detract from the car's exit speed. He's got a good clear run down into Parabolica, no interference from cars ahead. He can select his braking point, his turn-in point, get on the throttle precisely where he feels he needs to do. So it's going to be a significant improvement over his previous quickest lap. He was already over a second up in that middle sector, so he was 40th. I'm disappointed. Yeah. Only up to 36. That is a surprise.
It is, isn't it? I mean, OK, we don't know necessarily whether they're on a very heavy fuel load, whether it's old tyres, whether there's a plan here that they're working through. Check this, check that, and then we'll go for a qualifying run towards the end of the session. But yeah, I expected more as well. And straight away, in fact, Miguel Ramos has gone faster, so he's got pushed down from 36th already to 38th as Andrea Rizzoli's Porsche goes through. Now,
so let's have a little look and see what the Porsche can do. Currently, we're still just a fraction over a second away from the times that we saw at the end of 1.5 hours this morning. Track will be warmer, ambience warmer, but tyres will be used tyres. Teams may opt to fit a fresher or fresh set of rubber before the end, but it won't have a lot of bearing, because when we go to qualifying, we know that qualifying is early in the early hours in the morning, and the race starts here at 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon. So this is of relevance to what will happen 24 hours on from now.
Free practice this morning, one of the cars that was late out was the number 63 Bortolotti Marpelli Caldarelli Lamborghini, and I think I'm right in saying that that is the car that has not yet been on the circuit in this session either. Talk about keeping your powder dry and other cliches, but again, that car sacrificing the first third of the session. It's the one I can't account for just yet.
I mean, I'm assuming for the very same reasons that they chose not to go out immediately this morning, is they are so confident within what they've got, the car set up. They know the car so well. They've got such a strong driver lineup that they don't need to dial themselves in. When you've got Mirko Bortolotti, Marco Marpelli, Andrea Caldarelli, and a bowl of carbonara maybe at the end of the day. So it's a strong team, an exceptional team, and you've got exceptional drivers behind the wheel, and it's just it shows a level of confidence that they know what they've got, and they know what they can, how much they can get out of that package, and they don't need an hour and a half to go through the motions. All 3 drivers have done track time this morning. They will have been dialed in well before they ever came to Monza anyway, and now they're just doing the final preparations, principally for tomorrow, because this will not have any relevance directly on qualifying tomorrow morning.
Adrian Tombe, incidentally, has gone fastest, so the Audi to the top, the Santalot car, Adrian, of course, whose father was a Ferrari Formula 1 driver for a time. Marco Wittmann is down to second. Nico Bastian is now the best of the Mercedes drivers, third from Marciello and then Baumann. Neubauer's BM is sixth. Rob Bell at the wheel of the Jota 38 McLaren is seventh. Calvin van der Linde was eighth when I started that sentence, but Eddie Cheever has gone sixth fastest in the Sky Tempesta Ferrari. As you look at number 52 there, which is the Pro-Am AF Corsa car, Louis Machiels, Lorenzo Bontempelli and Andrea Bertolini.
That's a very good effort indeed by Eddie Cheever, but as you say, second quickest, or third quickest in fact, of the Pro-Am cars. Florian Schulzer is the quickest currently in the Get Speed Mercedes. So that's done a 147.9 against a 147.6, which is currently the fastest lap in this session. And Louis Machiels makes his way, exits that second chicane, looking, I think, relatively composed and comfortable, able to use the Ferrari, running it out to the very edge of the curbs on the exit, especially out of that second chicane. Again, on the exit out of Lesmo 2, not afraid to let the car free up in that area where you're leaving the black stuff and going on to the painted red and white.
You've done it, John. You've embarrassed Andrea Caldarelli onto the circuit. So he's ventured out now. So he's decided that he'll have to forgo that pasta you were talking about, and he'll go and do some laps for you.
Right. Well, let's have a look and see when he gets on track just how quickly the 63 Lamborghini will be. Andrea, undoubtedly, what can you say? He just knocked it out of the park in 2019, and he did much the same earlier this year in North America at Simona Raceway in Northern California.
Yeah, I mean, that 2019 season was exceptional, whether it was sprint, whether it was endurance, whether you look at him as a driver or as the team principal. I mean, everything fitted. It was just the season to have, and it was a remarkable job done. Right, Eddie Cheever's up to third overall. The Sky Tempesta Ferrari, there it is, just going down towards the Rettifilio chicane, up to third, and Eddie Cheever is only 2/10 off the best time of the session. That is Caldarelli, and he's got traffic ahead of him, but now we'll see just how quick the Orange One FFF Racing Team Lamborghini really is.
And we also may see whether there was wisdom in choosing to sit out the first 30 or so minutes of this session. The thing that you cannot factor in is if there is a problem, and he's backed out of it. Now, he's backed out of it because he sees a car ahead of him that's moving around in the racetrack. He wants to get a clean, clear run out of this upcoming corner into Parabolica. Builds up speed, or will build up speed now. So, Andrea Caldarelli, little minute adjustments on the steering wheel, just the balance of the car, probably a very narrow balance right now. He wants good turning in the low-speed corners, but he wants a lot of back-end grip when he needs on the car, for example, coming through Parabolica.
Absolutely right. So this is the first proper flying lap. He's done his start-up lap, as you might say. Rides the curb, and now he's on the power, John.
He certainly is. He had to work a little bit forward, but got the car through the exit pretty well now into Curva Grande, and it's more a squeeze in the steering wheel because this is flat out all the way around, probably exiting around about 140, maybe 250 kilometers per hour. Okay, small improvement personally. Second chicane, thump, clump, bang, wallop. You can hear the car, I mean the hammering the car gets just even on the exit of that second chicane. Now into Lesmo, get the nose into that curb, let the car float out to the exit, ride the curb, it's a flat curb. Again, get the nose back in for Lesmo 2. Careful on the throttle, don't be too ambitious, opening it too quickly, too hard, and he's done it absolutely perfectly now. The run down under what is part of the old and famous, or infamous to some people, bank circuit here at Monza. Hard on the brakes, down 3 gears into Ascari. Turn left, turn right, keep the throttle open, Andrea. Don't wimp out, flat out, Andrea. That's it. Good man. Building speed, but he's only picking up tenths of a second those first 2 sectors. Now he's got to pick his braking point, coming down into Parabolic. Just, well, it's between 150, somewhere in that region. Gets out of the throttle, down the gears. Watch on the exit, don't overrun. It's this point here, the red and white mark comes. If you get wheels over that, you will be penalised. Comes across start finish line, was 43rd. Only 6th. Only 6th on your first flying lap. Well, he'll be disappointed with that.
It's not a bad effort though, is it? Because that puts him only 4/10 off the top time set by the Santalok Audi. So Andrea Caldarelli may have taken his time about joining in, but he's arrived with an impact. What a lap.
And look, I was only joking about that. He'll be delighted with that time. But I'll tell you, somebody else who's going to be very delighted is Nelson Pancic in the Bentley. We saw that being very quick throughout earlier session. It's gone third quickest. It is now the fastest Pro-Am car in the field, having overtaken the Sky Tempesta Ferrari by 18 hundredths of a second.
A very, very good effort that. The CMR team, Classic Modern Racing, running number 107 Bentley, which had an off this morning. Gilles Vanelay in the free practice session just went off at the middle chicane, did a bit of frontal damage, but it's bounced back very effectively. As you now see, number 25, it's Christopher Haase at the wheel. This is a car that didn't really draw attention to itself much this morning, has a wobble coming into the Parabolica, but Haase, Tombe and Alessandro Cugno up from GT4, the drivers. That could be another dark horse. It's just wide open, this. I mean, every car, really, that runs in that overall section of the race, you say, well, that could win, that could win, that could win. It's an endless list.
Absolutely, that's why I said there are 20 cars to win, 20 could be in the top 10, but there's only space for 10. Christopher Haase actually entering into Parabolica, whether he was slightly, again, look at the curb he's using there in the first chicane. He clipped the curb at the apex of Parabolica, and that deflected the car slightly out to the left. So his exit speed may have been fractionally down on that lap, and that little kind of, let's say, misjudgment can have a bearing, because you come out of a fairly quick corner onto the quickest part of the racetrack down into the first chicane.
Well, he survived the moment, and it's the Adrian Tambay time that car is still relying on, which in turn is a 10th up on the BMW of Marco Wittmann. It is Audi, BMW, Bentley, Ferrari, Mercedes, Lamborghini, Mercedes, BMW, McLaren in the top 10. 9 different brands represented going into this first round of Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Endurance Cup. Haase is giving that Audi a real workover, isn't he? He's not afraid to use the curb, and he's not afraid to really lean on the car. He's got the Mercedes ahead, which is an interesting benchmark, really, to compare his pace against the Ram Racing car as they come now down towards the Parabolica. Callum McLeod, British Formula 4 champion in the Mercedes there. And that is the Bentley John was talking about, with the French tricolour draped across it. So the livery morphs from the blue on one side to the red on the other. Nelson Pancic at the wheel. That Bentley going really, really well. Extremely well. Delighted to see it. It was strong this morning. And, I mean, at one point they were second or third quickest overall. Car ended up, actually, in fact, in second quickest. So where this Bentley has suddenly found this performance, whatever it is, it's more than welcome. And this is a pro car. Sorry, I beg your pardon, it's a Pro-Am car. Currently vying along with the Sky Tempesta Ferrari to be quickest in that Pro-Am. Looks like he's making a visit into the pit lane because he's backed out of it. So I suspect that's a visit to the pit lane. Yes, it is. But a very good run, and great to see the Bentley running at this level. I mean, being able to run comfortably in the top 3 here and ending up second quickest this morning is testament to the basic quality that Bentley has always had. Yes, it was here that the original car and then this later evolution made their respective debuts. Quick right out of the blocks, and it's good that we still have Bentley representation, because there are fewer and fewer of them, sadly, in the domestic championships. Number 2 Mercedes, Florian Scholze, has taken over this car. So the former Lamborghini Super Trofeo class champion, sharing the car with Nico Bastien and Olivier Grutz. It's Nico Bastien time that has got the car up there, but Florian Scholze now behind the wheel of it. Out of the Parabolica, up towards the line. And this car, operated by the Get Speed Performance team, goes through. That lap by Florian Scholze was a 1:49, and in the hands of Nico Bastien it was doing 1:47, so a little bit of a disparity between the two there. Indeed, and clearly, and we know just how good Nico Bastien is, and
I've always waited to see the day that Nico Bastian gets into a full pro car. He's always been, and certainly in recent years, the pro driver in a Pro-Am car, and I'd love to have seen that talent in a pro car going for potentially an overall victory.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a shame that we don't get to that point, but the day will come, I'm sure, and it'll be well worth watching. There, number 93, now Chris Froggatt at the wheel of the car. Former Ferrari Challenge racer, but now a stalwart of GT World Challenge Europe, both endurance and sprint. Hanging the back of the Ferrari out a little bit there as he came out of the second of the Lesmos, but getting on with the job.
Yes, and he's got a lot of pressure from behind the number 4 HRT Mercedes. You know, when you see that car in your mirrors, you know that it's a pro car, and it will be in a rush. Chris Froggatt bouncing over the curbs on the entry into Ascari, gets through the final segment of that 3-corner chicane. So where is the Mercedes? It's not going to catch the Ferrari in a straight line. Ferrari have got very good straight line speed, and you can see the gap between the Mercedes behind the Ferrari has not actually diminished.
No, you're right about that. This is Froggatt's view as he comes off the parabolica, rattles up onto the curb on the outside, so he's down in the sectors. One arm off the, can't call it a wheel, can you, the controller as he comes over the line, and then focuses once more, gets through the traffic, leaving the pit lane. He's about to stand on the brakes, John.
Yes, there's a big stand as well. Oh, I felt that even in the commentary chair. But, you know, it's his gig if he wants to thump the curbs. Be my guest. The danger of doing that is eventually you could damage a tyre being too aggressive with an aggressive curve as you get here at the first chicane. So while on a single lap, maybe not an issue, but over the duration of a run, just bear it in mind that you want the tyre to be a part of the car, not something that is detaching from the car.
So through goes with a bit of a wobble, 93. Again, cars not falling off the road, but just looking loose, even later in the day. Okay, they might be on warm tyres now, you could argue, rather than the cold track temperatures of this morning, but we've talked about aero of a GT3 car, but some of them still do look loose rather than nervous, don't they?
I've not seen as many cars look loose, in other words, on the oversteery side of balanced, as I've seen here throughout these two sessions, and particularly down at Lesmo 1 as a corner that is very much shaded, as we just watched the Lamborghini make its way through. Emil Frey, Rolf van Eycken, Alex Fontana, Ricardo Feller, another outstanding performer last year. So that's the shaded part of the racetrack, and track temperatures there still maybe in the low side. It doesn't explain why we're seeing a lot of cars just teetering on the edge of oversteer. Something on the track, I believe, there's a bit of bodywork, maybe a rear wing return flap. I'm not quite sure what that is, but certainly just off the racing line. So Alex Fontana exits out of the chicane. Ooh, flirted with the gravel on the outside, and now he realizes he's got to clean those tires up before he attacks Parabolica. So he tries the best by doing that little weave midway down the straight. So he thinks he's got it sorted out. It's on the the right side, so it's the left side of the car that will take the predominant load. And that just indicates just how hard everybody right now on tyres that are probably well into a stint, possibly beyond 20 laps, when the tyre is a level of degradation which that will then set in, and that's the point where the tyre performance begins to sort of, it's reached its peak and it's trying to consolidate, but gradually just beginning to fade away.
Yeah, that last third of the stint come the race will be really interesting to see who has looked after the rubber, who's got a little bit more life left in the tyre, and how that's going to affect the battles that we've been witnessing. Stuart Hall here in the Gulf Liverid, the Rothko Audi effectively, comes into the Rettifilio chicane. Benji Goethe of the Rothko family is one of the other drivers of that car, and the third is James Pull, who we saw in the Barwell Lamborghini squad in World Challenge Europe last year. Have a look at the top speeds as well, that the different cars, different drivers are able to pull. Frank Bird, very rapid in the number 31 WRT Audi, 280 kilometers an hour in a straight line. Riccardo Zolo, 279. Charles Wirtz, Audi 279. Christopher Haas's Audi 279. Raffaele Marciello, 279. So some big numbers being produced here.
Yeah, these are substantial top speed. You're looking at the thin end of a 180 miles per hour. What's interesting watching Goethe in the Gulf Audi coming down into the first chicane, and I've noticed a number of drivers are tending to hover more in the middle of the racetrack on their entry rather than staying on the left-hand side. And the reason, I suspect, is that the braking zone into that first chicane is getting bumpier by the year, and therefore drivers are staying away from that as best as possible to not destabilize the car at a critical point when they're coming off the throttle and hitting the brake pedal probably fairly hard, and they want to give the car the best opportunity. If we get another glimpse of a car on a flying lap coming into that first chicane, to see whether that's something most drivers are, certainly in the pro category, are looking at, or whether it's just one or two, that's their chosen line. But what we should see is the car on the right-hand side of the straight as you come down into the chicane stays over there all the way down. The Mercedes is on the traditional line. It doesn't look, but look how much the Audi has to come from right to left. And all I can assume is that there's a sense that that is a little bit bumpier than it might have been a year ago.
Could well be. Yes, it's a good point, Matt. This is Christopher Haase, who's still at the wheel of 25. This is still the fastest car by a tenth of a second from number 34 BMW, that's now got David Pittard behind the wheel. David, who has become part of the BMW family of late, really on the back of his Valkenhorst links, and with doing a very, very good job predominantly at the Nürburgring. But he's a much underrated driver and deserves a break, as David Pittard, so it's really good to have him full-time in the championship this year, and he's currently in the second placed car within the times, and of course the driver now, not necessarily the driver that did the times. What is significant, John, just going back to an earlier point, we're not getting anything like the number of improvements now, are we? So that rush of shuffling early on is now done, as though teams work through this programme now, whether it's scrubbing in tyres, whether it's running drivers to give them the mileage, and each team will do something slightly different. It won't be the same principle across, inevitably, 43 cars. Different teams, different drivers will want to be doing different things, achieve different elements out of this session.
Yes, I would say that's correct, but one thing I would assume everybody wants to do is give each of their three drivers, or in some cases there are only two drivers per car, give them seat time in these conditions, because this is really what it's all about come 24 hours on from now. You'll be racing in this ambient and track temperature environment, so get accustomed to it. The car inside will be a lot warmer as well. So while you were out in the morning when it was only just under 10 Celsius, and there was a lot of cool air coming into the car through the ventilation, later in the afternoon the air is warmer, and of course you get a load of heat soak coming through an enclosed cockpit car. That comes from the radiators, comes from the location of the engine, whether it's in front of you or behind you, and there's just a general heat soak build-up. And if you're not accustomed to that, that's why some drivers opt to use a cool suit. Some drivers used to use a cool balaclava, which you fit before you put your helmet on, just to give their body that little bit of additional cooling, just to make them more comfortable.
Well, the temperatures for mid-April are not going to be as big a factor as they might be, say, at Paul Ricard for the 6R race when we get there in a month's time, or elsewhere as the season goes on, but he will be a factor. And that's David Pittard. Having talked him up, he's had a little moment going into the Rettifilio chicane. So the Valkenhorst BMW just slightly compromised. Number 7, Oscar Tunjo behind him in the Mercedes, as we've gone past the halfway point of this session. Quite a few sitting in the pit lane at the moment, including Raffaele Marciello, also Valentin Asclos's Aston Martin, which has not had a stellar session. It's still at the foot of the times. That's it. And Tunjo now taking the fight on track anyway to David Pittard. Splits his time these days, between residing in the UK and Germany, where he does the bulk of his Valkenhorst activity, but he comes then now out of the first of the Lesmo curves. Now, what else do we need to be looking for? There's the 71 Ferrari of Davide Rigon, a long way back relative to what it was doing this morning, only 13th in the times. And what of number 63, Andrea Caldarelli, 7th. So he was late into the session, got on with the job quite quickly, but again, set a time now. Does look as though teams are thinking about, as I say, scrubbing in tyres or doing a stint, 20 laps, 30 laps maybe, and working through a programme. Maybe in the last few minutes we might start to see people run a qualifying setup as a precursor to tomorrow, Bear in mind, the bulk of the times, the really important times, are going to be done courtesy of Q3, which is, by its very nature, of course, the last of the 3 sessions, but significantly when the cars are lighter on fuel. You start for Q1 on a heavier fuel load, and it goes without saying that it's lighter and therefore quicker when you get to the end of Q3. That's when the really competitive times will be set. So they might be trying to simulate that towards the very end of this session as this fuel load has burnt off. 39 minutes are on the clock, and it is Audi, BMW, Bentley, the top 3. There is the Valentin Asclo Aston Martin that I was mentioning, and that looks a little bit forgotten about almost. No wheels, no activity. Might be one to try and investigate that if we can, because it's not looking as though it's going to burst into the session anytime soon. 222 is the Allied Racing Ferrari. Nicholas Schürrle coming into the pit lane, former GT4 racer. That's number 38 McLaren, which has got Ben Barnicoat behind the wheel, but he also heads for the pit lane. On track, it's the last activity of the day for the GT drivers, GT3 drivers, but not for all of them off track, because the Silver and overall teams nominate a driver for the Fanatec eSports series that kicks off this evening. Ben Barnicoat, for example, is one such. For Iron Lynx, here's Nicholas Nielsen, who's another eSports competitor this evening, joining Alessandro Pierguidi and Kurt Ledegaard, who of course was a champion with McLaren a few seasons back, but winner at Paul Ricard from Ferrari, and he stayed with the Italian brand. So the French driver making another good combination here. Alessandro Pierguidi, the reigning champion of the Endurance Cup, and Nicholas Nielsen, very quick young driver, somebody else well thought of by the Scuderia. So into the second of the chicanes goes 51, and that car fair way down at the moment, 24 fastest, but come back to this point about numbers, and also it's not where you are in pre-qualifying, it's where you are at the end of 3 hours tomorrow afternoon that's really going to count. Again, what's very encouraging, and it hasn't always been the case, is how, find wood to touch, little drama we've had. Quite often we've had incidents aplenty, and with all this pent-up desire to go racing after the last few months, you can understand people's enthusiasm, but they've all been quite well restrained thus far. Kiko Galbiati, incidentally, number 16 Lamborghini, has just improved. He's another newcomer to World Challenge Europe out of the Super Trofeo. So that's a car that had a spin this morning with co-driver Tim Zimmerman driving it, number 16 Lamborghini, but going quite strongly now. 37 minutes still on the clock. Valentin Asclo back into the session, looking at the timing screen, and also look for another improver. Very few. Comes back to this point I'm making about drivers now getting onto a race run, working through a program, because you're not getting that urgency of the times. There is one improvement in the sector from Alex Fontana's Lamborghini, but for the moment it's all gone a little quieter, relatively speaking. So the Santalok Audi, the Valkenhorst BMW, and then third, the CMR Bentley. It's now got Stuart White, the South African driver, behind the wheel. 26 here is the Fred Verviche driven Audi. He is joined also at Santalok here by Marcus Winkelhock and Finlay Hutchison, the Scottish driver. And that is a car that certainly with Verviche and Winkelhock behind the wheel of is going to be very, very strong indeed. Pressure on Finlay Hutchison really to rise to the occasion. He's got a busy season ahead of him, racing in Sprint and Endurance Cup, so he'll get the mileage in. GT4 graduate, but it's Fred Verviche probably that you would say is going to be the star driver in that car. Kiko Galbiati, another improvement last time through in his Lamborghini, up to 12. Verviche then raced single-seaters in the States, but another very loyal member of the Audi family, whether it's been in a GT car or a TCR spec Audi S3 over recent seasons, and he delivers no matter what you put him in. Another excellent driver is Frederick Vernich, the Belgian star. Rides the curb as he rattles up towards the Variante Ascari, turns through now. You can see the backing brought to that car by Finlay Hutchison's family, Hutchison Telecom. And down towards the Parabolica comes Fred Verviche now then. So the Santalok car. Santalok, another team that has taken strides forward, and that off the road is the Brendan Arib, Ollie Milroy McLaren. Ollie Milroy at the wheel of it, and that suggests that it is not pointing in the right direction. Now, where has that all happened? That's coming out of the second chicane, isn't it? So was that a spin that has put it there, or has he pulled off with mechanical dramas? I suspect a spin, looking at the tyre tracks just across the runoff area. So Ollie Milroy has brought out a yellow flag in the second sector. Can that car fire up again? It's going to be awkward to get it away from there, I would have thought. So let's see what happens. Unless he's got a lot of lock to go left, he won't. So he's going to have to do a U-E almost and then try and find a gap in the traffic. So all of this eats into the session for him. Yellow flags wave. As into the pit lane comes Stuart White in the Bentley. It still towers over many of the rather more aero-friendly cars, but as ever, both iterations of this car really charismatic shapes. So in comes then the 107 Bentley. Stuart White will stay behind the wheel looking at this, although it might be that the car gets quickly whizzed into the garage for a bit of work, because that way more people can work upon the car. Now what's going on here for the Ferrari? That's another of the Kessel fleet, and it is Giorgio Roda at the wheel. Coming up towards the Variante Ascari. That is 33rd, as you see, but not improving in the sectors on this lap. More and more pit stops are cycling through. Just looking at the screen, the number of cars that are coming in is increasing all the while, and we are still awaiting that McLaren to get going again, I think. But we had Ollie Milroy off the road. Brendan Reeb is the second driver, another quick guy who is going to be well worth watching as he gets used to the circuits. And we are just about to nudge into the final third of this pre-qualifying session. That you're kind of waiting now, John, to really burst back into life with some times, aren't we?
I would like to see maybe some teams opting to take a fresh set of tyres, a new set of tyres, just to see what the ultimate pace is, if anybody can get close to the time set earlier in the morning by Foucault in the 71 Ferrari. Right now we are, the best part of 8-9 tenths away from that, as we look at Marco Marpelli in the 63 Lamborghini, as we still, that car seems like it's going to remain there behind the safety barriers. But back to Marco Marpelli. Currently 63 is 7th quickest. That was a time, I believe, set by Andrea Caldarelli.
Yeah.
And we've yet to see Marco. We haven't seen yet Mirko Bortolotti out in this car, so he'll probably get maybe 15 minutes or so behind the wheel before the session comes to an end.
Yeah, I was musing a little while ago, wasn't I, about whether teams would think about a dummy qualifying run right at the very end when this fuel load is burnt off. Well, the Orange 1 FFF racing team is thinking about that. Bortolotti may well be the driver given that driving duty, because he is a very, very quick driver. We know that. He's always a good bet for a pole position, so maybe that's why they're treating it this way. Caldarelli sets the car up, Marpelli does his laps, and then towards the end you bang in Mirko Bortolotti and light the blue touch paper and stand back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I was in the position of Andrea Caldarelli, who essentially is the lead driver, is the team principal, is the team owner and whatever, if that's how you'd want to determine what the ultimate pace of the 63 Lamborghini is, that's what I would also choose to do.
Getting through the traffic here is Marpelli. Very, very good, solid, safe pair of hands, isn't he? He's quick, he's dependable, doesn't really draw attention to himself for anything other than just being very, very effective in the car. Sheldon van der Linde's BMW in the meantime second fastest. He's just taken that over from David Pittard, and the time done at the start of the session by Marco Wittmann, so they're all having a turn behind the wheel here now.
Yeah, Sheldon van der Linde certainly has got the capacity and now got a lot of experience, and if there's a time in the BMW that has not been accessed, he is more than capable of doing so. But again, it will all be tyre limited. I mean, the idea of running a simulation of qualifying is on the one hand gives you a great warm feeling if you do the time, but do you want to use a set of tyres that really might be of more value, not necessarily in qualifying tomorrow morning, but to give each of your three drivers the best possible opportunity with the freshest or the newest sets of tyres that you have? So Sheldon van der Linde will go out, drive the limit of what the car will provide him with. Whether that's going to make any difference ultimately to car's current second quickest position. 1:47.7 is what the car did with Marco Wittmann behind the wheel, and that was done on the car's 7th lap in this session. The car is now on its 28th lap.
We've got one car that's being investigated for possibly improving under a yellow flag, and it's number 159, Valentin Asclot, who went back out, went from 43rd to 31st in the times, but may have well done that while the yellow flag was out. Well, if you were slowest and you go even a tenth quicker, you are going to improve. Anyway, that's being looked at, so the lap time that the car has done may not survive. However, more of that when we know. As driver changes are cycling through, we've now got Alexandre Cugno in the quickest car in the session, number 25 Audi. Sheldon van der Linde taken to the curb there in the still looked big BMW, but it's an effective weapon, that car.
It is a physically large car. When that BMW, the new BMW M4, whatever designation BMW give it, that will be a smaller car with all the benefits that the current M6 we're looking at has got. And that should further enhance BMW's position as a brand leader in GT racing.
Yes, BMW has been a loyal supporter of GT3 over the years, going back to the Z4. Remember the great efforts of the Marc VDS racing team in the Z4 in the early days of the Endurance Cup. Over the timing line then goes Sheldon van der Linde. Behind him you can see the bright yellow Mercedes, the Florian Scholzer, Olivier Grutz and Nico Bastien. Why is Norbert Siedler only 21st, just looking at that timing tower? A long way back. There is Hubert Haupt, player manager of Haupt Racing Team. Massively experienced driver is Hubert Haupt as well, and this is the second of his two cars, the one that runs in the Silver Cup for Hubert, for Ricardo Sanchez and Patrick Assenheimer.
And Hubert Haupt, as we have seen in previous events, even though he is the owner of the team, can still deliver an effective performance. So if any of the other two drivers are, let's say, not delivering, he has got the capacity to go in and say, well, the problem is not necessarily a technical issue, which is not something a driver never wants to be told.
True. But Audi factory driver in the early 90s in the DTM, raced in America, very experienced campaigner is Hubert Haupt, and the enthusiasm is undimmed. I mean, he's come back to racing at this level and enjoyed it so much, effectively took over a team, or what was Black Falcon, that was struggling to put together a programme, morphed into Hubert Haupt's team. He didn't have to do it that way, but elected so to do, and therefore taking on that extra responsibility and bankrolling the squad. But it's working out well. Whoa, way wide there, out of the Variante Ascari, mind you.
Very wide indeed. Just you've got the stats there, David. Just put into a round figure the age of Hubert Haupt, just to put it into so I can understand whether I am too old or whether I've still got a bit of fuel in the tank I could deliver in a race car. So Hubert Haupt would be in his 50s.
He's in his 50s, yes, early to mid 50s.
He's a very young man then.
Yeah. Whippersnapper, I'm afraid. Yeah. But he still delivers, and he's savvy enough to get good people around him to deliver the lap times if he isn't quite on that last 10th. Here's another car from Barwell Motorsport that you can anticipate good class results from, because it's a well-drilled operation. Miguel Ramos, hugely experienced. He and Enrique Chavez, last year's International GT Open champions, and the experienced Adrian Amstutz joins them. That car may, in terms of qualifying pace, not be outstanding in the Pro-Am Cup, but I'd wager it's good for the podium by the end of 3 hours.
Oh, very much so, and I think Mark Lemmer, who owns and runs the Barwell race team, has got an enviable record of success over many seasons. And again, as you pointed out, it's not about where you are on the opening lap, it's where you finish on the final lap, and that's the lap that really ultimately is the lap that goes into the record book.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and all three of them are experienced drivers. Adrian Amstutz, particularly experienced in Lamborghinis, came out of Super Trofeo into Lamborghini GT3 cars, so he knows the car. He has been with Barwell for many seasons, so it's a good fit there. He's comfortable with the team and the environment, and 38th overall. But as we keep saying, I think not even this time tomorrow. There'll be a couple of hours further on when you get to the end of the race from this time tomorrow as to where that car is going to be. Right, 25 minutes of this session still to run, and I'm waiting for the timing screen to light up with fresh names and with improved sectors. But you know, there are so many cars sitting in the pit lane at the moment that they're not going to stay there to the very end. Surely we are going to see a dummy qualifying run before the very end of the day.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if anybody does choose to use a set of tyres that ultimately may have more benefit and value tomorrow. If teams didn't get what they had hoped for this morning, that might be the option that they will care to take. But because temperatures today now are going to be significantly different to those tomorrow at 9 a.m. I don't know whether there ultimately is a big value in doing it or not. You'd have to have had a car that was certainly very imbalanced this morning to risk running a set of tyres that you'd really prefer to use tomorrow.
Now, Gilles Vanelay, who had an off in the Bentley this morning, is currently behind the wheel of it and has ventured into the session. First time he's been in the car this afternoon. Also new to the circuit, Stefan Gehrig, who has just taken over number 93, the Sky Tempesta Ferrari. Stefan Gehrig is the guy that used to race as Edvard Lewis Brown, I think I'm right in saying, in the GT Sports Club. But he's taken over the Ferrari. Olivier Grutz has taken over number 2, and there's still probably a good dozen or so in the pit lane yet to venture out, but we'll get there. 23 minutes on the clock.
Just trying to gain just how many laps the average has done. So Santa Locke, which is currently the quickest car, has completed 29 laps. The Valkenhorst Motorsport BMW has completed 30. This is in the, I say, the top sort of 20 or so. So it's around about mid-20s is the average lap that most competitors have done, with a couple almost kissing the 30. The Valkenhorst Motorsport is the only one that has really broken into the 30 lap. So it's a lot of running on one set of tyres, and that set of tyres may have also done pretty much the bulk of the running this morning.
In terms of track limit warnings, here's a little aside for you. The two cars, I can't put this down to individual drivers, the two cars that have accrued the most are Audis. One is WRT's Ryoichi Tomita, Frank Bird, Valdemar Eriksson entry. The other, with 3 track limit warnings, Fred Vernich, Finlay Hutchison and Marcus Winkelhock.
Well, I wonder which of the 3 is the one that's the guilty party, or are they all going to claim it was me, Gov, it was me, Gov, it was me, Gov?
It was him, Gov, it was him, Gov, it was him, Gov. Pass the buck. Interesting, though.
I mean, I know that Fred Vernich, who, when you see him in his civvies, looks like you're, I don't know, just the most normal person in the world. But he is a right little tiger when he gets behind the wheel. And he is a race driver and a racer. He doesn't just drive racing cars, he is a racer.
Now, the pit lane does get busy. Look, 163 brought back onto the apron, ready to go again, as there is 51 coming in, yeah.
And it's got no wheels, tyres fitted. That might be an indication as to what Emil Fry might be wanting to do. 20-odd minutes remaining. Would they consider putting on something different to that they've been running earlier? The car currently 7th quickest at a 148.1. So just a little heads up to keep an eye on that. Oh, I'm looking at the 63, I beg your pardon. Well, whatever, I beg your pardon, the one, which one? The 163 as opposed to the 63. The 163, looking to see what they have done this afternoon. They don't appear to be in the top 20, and they actually are 22nd. So I would assume that a 148.6, whatever they do when they go back out again, the car's been worked on in the garage. That's why it's been up on the dolly on those little axle stands. And whatever set of tyres they do put on it, then we will see whether they can improve on what is currently 23rd quickest time.
I'd be surprised if it didn't improve, got to say, but equally there are lots of people, we keep making the point, all vying to be in that top 10. Can't all be there. 54 Porsche pressing on. Now Johnny Adam all of a sudden has got the 188 Aston Martin by the scruff of the neck and gone 15th fastest. He was 20-something a little while ago, but Johnny Adam up to 15th fastest. Matteo Cairoli is at the helm of number 54 Porsche, 30th quickest. That's another one in a hurry now, because it's, as you can see, improved in the middle sector. And the Carrera Cup Italia champion presses on. Where is he now? Coming out of the Parabolica. So 30th it was. Should be an improver. Breaks the beam now. And up to 10th fastest. Matteo Cairoli. That was a good lap, John.
Yes, I mean, that lap is not just simply down to Cairoli. All of a sudden finding a second plus on the lap. There is a reason behind it. And I suspect that the reason behind it is to do that the team have made a decision to run on another set of tires. You do not just dig out of the box of experience a time that takes you from 30th to 10th because you put in Matteo Cairoli in the car. That is not the reason why. There's a reason, which I believe is they've put a set of tires on the car which is fresher and younger. That's where that lap time has come from.
So there is 25, which is Alexandre Cunha at the wheel of the Santa Loc Audi. It's the fastest car. He didn't do the time, admittedly, but he is getting his miles in now. So topping the times, number 25 for Santa Loc. Matteo Cairoli into the top 10. Then that was the last significant improver. And there are still, okay, surprise is positive in terms of people getting up the order. Surprise is negative, like why, for example, Dries Van Thor is only 13th, Callum Eilert is only 14th, Maro Engel is only 17th. Still feel there's going to be a bit of a sort out before the checkered flag.
Well, certainly, I mean, thinking of the time that the 71 Ferrari did, the car that Callum Eilert is currently behind the wheel of, having done a stunning time this morning, a 146.6, why that car's best lap, and it's nothing to do with Callum Eilert, that car's best lap is 148.4, almost 1.8 seconds slower than this morning. Again, you come back to the clear and obvious reason. But why would the team Iron Lynx not want to maintain that advantage, or certainly show continuity of pace that they showed this morning?
True enough. Right, Cunha over the timing line, 17.5 minutes on the clock. Pit lanes, still got a few looking at the ID on the screens that we have, timing and scoring. So bit by bit, more and more go out onto the circuit. Let's see, and we might get a clearer idea of the cars to beat as well as we get towards race day. Audi's dodge around, that was 32. Dries Van Thor letting quicker cars go, so he's on a start-up lap effectively, not wanting to impede anybody.
And actually what he wants to do is also not get too close to that group of cars that is directly ahead. There is the view. You see him on the brakes way earlier than he needs to be. Slow down, but he's got traffic behind him. There we go. So in slowing himself down to give him track space, he's allowed other cars to jump in and get ahead of him. So he's almost compromised himself in trying to uncompromise himself.
And a red flag is being shown looking at the screen. You can just see under the pre-qualifying legend of the clock at the top. So the red flag has been shown. There's incidents out on the circuit somewhere. And that, therefore, may actually be the end of the pre-qualifying session, depending on how long it takes to clear the road. So we'll have to wait and see. But with 16 minutes to go, clock carries on ticking, as you can see for the moment. The session gets a red flag.
Yes, I know there's a particular set of circumstances. 15 minutes to go, a red flag by the time everybody cycles back to the pits, and they then address the issue. We're waiting to find out where and who's involved. It's if the cars do have the opportunity to return to the circuit, it's not going to be an awful lot of time remaining. So back into the pit lane as we look at Maro Engel and the number 4 Mercedes, hard racing, and that car will remain in the pit lane because the track is closed. The team take the opportunity. It's good thinking on the part of the team. They're going to push the car back into the garage. No, they're not. They're just lining it up in echelon.
Yeah.
Or maybe had to change their mind.
I think until
Not
they...
quite sure what they're planning on doing, to be truthful.
I was going to say, until they know whether it's a restart or not, they might as well get ready. Now, that is 222 Porsche, Jan Kasperlik, at the second of the Lesmo curves. And there's a bit over there, there's a bit over there, and a bit in the middle. John, this is reminiscent of somebody else's accident.
I have to say, looking at it, a lot of superficial damage to the car. When I did it properly.
Not like this.
Watch and see what happens. Here he comes, runs wide. Exactly what happened to me. But he nosed it in. Oh, that was a heavy impact on the front of the car. I put the back of the car into the wall, so that absorbed a lot of the energy. But going in nose front, you will have a fairly substantial G load on the seat belts. So every part of your body where the belts are attached to, and especially the crutch straps, will certainly... You'll have bruises in the morning.
The session will not be resumed. Session will not restart because of the time it will take to repair any barrier damage. So that's the end of the pre-qualifying session. And it might be the end of that Porsche. Let's hope that it can be repaired overnight. But that's got some serious damage, I would have thought.
I don't know whether it hit the Tech Pro barrier. You can see those grey blocks. And those are the Tech Pro barriers that are now familiar around most Grade 1 FIA racetracks. If the car hit those barriers, it will have diminished the loading and the impact significantly. If that had hit an unprotected Armco barrier, that would have been a different incident. But I think it might have been the Tech Pro blocks at the nose of the Porsche. I mean, it hit it probably doing 70 or 80 miles an hour, and that's a big shock load for the driver. But the Tech Pro barrier really will diminish ultimately that impact.
So, red flag, session doesn't get going again. Let's just quickly look at the order then. It is the Audi, almost out of nowhere really, after a modest morning of Adrien Tambay, Alexandre Cugno and Christopher Haase that takes the top time from Sheldon van der Linde, Marco Wittmann and David Pittard's BMW, the Valkenhorst car on the CMR Bentley, Gilles Vanelay, Stuart White, Nelson Panciatici third, also therefore quickest in Pro-Am. The top silver, number 7 Mercedes, Oscar Tuncho, Paul Petit and Marvin Dienst, former German Formula 4 champion and Porsche racer in sports cars most recently, but switching brands for the purposes of this season. Scroll further down and you can see, first of all, just how good an entry this is. The car that's caused the stoppage, 19, thanks to the efforts of Nicolas Scherr, but it's Jan Kasperlik who suffered this big off at the Lesmos and brought out the red flag. Go a little bit further down and you find 163, the Costa Siedler Altoe Lamborghini that never really was able to prove what it was capable of. If they were waiting to the end, well, that opportunity taken away by the early stoppage. And of course the Ollie Milroy, Brendan Aribe McLaren, number 70, another car that had strife, that was also off the road, remember, up at the second of the chicanes, and that's where it stayed. It didn't rejoin from there, so that was another one that lost track time in this session. So, at the end of the pre-qualifying session, Adrien Tambay is the man that did the time, and Adrien can tell all to Gemma Scott.
Adrien, the session has come to an early finish, but you've held the fastest time there throughout the majority of the session.
Yeah, it was actually a very good session for us. I could not really have a lot of laps on the testing on Thursday, and it was important for me to take the rhythm. It's not always good to be P1 in pre-practice, you know. It's better to be in qualifying, but at least we know the car is there and the team is doing a good job as well. For me, it's the first time I do a full season here, so to start like this is a good sign, and it is a good boost for my confidence.
Excellent, thank you very much. Well
Thank
done.
you.
So a tenth of a second, Adrien Tambay ahead of the Marco Wittmann BMW, and that's the car that's third. It's been the surprise of the day in many respects. Gilles Vanelay along with Stuart White and Nelson Panciatici. Let's look at the highlights then of that truncated pre-qualifying session. Cars streaming out onto the circuit's early doors, trying of course to get clear track space, to first of all do a time and then work through the programme that the team had in mind for the session. 1 or 2 exploring track limits a little bit at the Parabolica, but Porsche's blasting out of the dynamic garage, and the Get Speed Performance Mercedes also in a big hurry as Nico Bastien went out onto the circuit. Number 35 was quick in the hands early on of Timo Glock. So too number 32 Audi Dries van Thor at the wheel, but 25 for Santilok Adrian Tombay topping the times. Nelson Panciatici being a real star in the 107 Bentley, that car flying, whereas number 14, Riccardo Feller, had a little moment in that, but he was probably the quickest of the three. So, pre-qualifying done because of that red flag. Tomorrow morning from 9 o'clock Monza time is the three-part qualifying session, and that's going to be very interesting indeed as we start to assemble the grid for the opening round of the Endurance Cup. And we'll see you tomorrow for that. From John Watson and David Addison, goodbye for now.